What's doing? Welcome back to another video. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all 31 people that subscribed this week. It's been about 6 days and I've already had such incredible support from everyone. So thank you. You're the reason I do this. All right, let's get cracking. As you've all probably seen from the thumbnail, this video is all about how I became the co-founder of a social enterprise at age 20 years old. And the reason I'm making this video is because I've had a lot of friends and family and people I've met in my travels ask me, how do you start a business, let alone a social enterprise at 20 years of age with no prior business knowledge or no family connected in the social enterprise space? How do you even start? Where do you start? How do you get the ideas for this? And that's what this video is really about. It's about giving you a bit of an origin story of my social enterprise startup, Spair Pair, and giving you a bit of an understanding as to how we got it from zero to where it is today. I will also preface anything I say in this video by saying that this is not so much a how to start a business as it is more of an origin story. I think in the future what I'm going to do is create a bit of a mini series on how I started the business, how I went from idea to actual products being sold to actual mission being delivered. However, I think in this particular video I'm going to be talking about where the idea came and how we got it to where it is today. So sit back, grab the popcorn, and let's get to it. So for a bit of background, Spair Pair is the social enterprise that I co-founded with my best mate Josh halfway through 2018. So Spair Pair is a social enterprise that aims to provide basic necessities to those in need. Who are those in need? Those in need are those living in disadvantage or experiencing homelessness here in Australia. Now, when I refer to homelessness and say that we cater for those experiencing homelessness, I don't just mean those living on the streets. I mean a definition way more broader than that. To us, there's 3 tiers of homelessness. First is primary homelessness. Those are people living on the streets, people sleeping rough, people with no place to go. Then there's secondary homelessness. Those are people who don't have a solid place to go, but are couch surfing and have somewhat of a roof over their head. And then there's tertiary homelessness. People with a pretty substantial roof over their head, yet not a really permanent place to stay. Or if it is a permanent place to stay, not having enough income to afford basic necessities and only get by with things such as food or utilities. So when I say basic necessities, what am I referring to? Well, actually, I'm referring to things such as socks. Now, when I say this to people, people say, socks? Why socks? Why are you providing people with socks? And well, actually, there's a really good reason behind it. It's because socks are actually the most requested item by people experiencing homelessness and living in disadvantage, especially here in Australia. Socks are actually one of the #1 most stolen items by people sleeping rough. And they're actually one of the most important items when you think about it. They're one of the first things you put on in the morning and they're one of the last things you take off at night. During the winter, they help keep your body warm and regulate temperature. And during the summer, if you're not wearing socks on your shoes, that can promote things like bacteria growing and building up, which can lead to fungal diseases and other sicknesses. So socks are actually a really important piece of clothing that we all need. And when you're sleeping rough or don't have enough money to buy things like that, it can lead to a lot of serious issues. And that's where Spair Pair steps in and seeks to help out. So before starting Spair Pair, I had no idea that these were the pain points and the pressure points of a lot of people experiencing homelessness, especially here in Australia. And it wasn't until I took that first step of actually being more intimate with the issue that I wished to resolve did I begin to understand what people actually needed. So anyway, with a bit of background information out of the way, let's start with how it actually came to fruition. So like I said, prior to starting Spair Pair, I had no business knowledge, I had no business acumen. I never really surrounded myself with people who were interested in this kind of stuff. But it wasn't until about first or second year through uni that I developed a bit of an interest for business and a bit of an interest for entrepreneurship. I had no idea what any of those words meant and I really wanted to find out. So once this little bit of interest developed, I started to consume a lot of content, consume a lot of media that I thought would help. One of the biggest steps I took was I started listening to a podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire by John Lee Dumas. And in this particular podcast, founders and co-founders and business people are all interviewed about their greatest successes and the way they started out and the way they started a business. And from listening to all these different episodes, I began to understand little bits and pieces about where people went for their first pieces of information, how they came up with a business idea, and what they actually did to create success. And that podcast was great and I still listen to it to this day. However, it didn't give me clear-cut, defined ways to start a business, especially here in Australia. But one of the biggest things it did teach me was that in order to start a business, you have to first have an idea. And I've found that to this day to still be one of the hardest parts. And I think I found it to be one of the hardest parts because in the beginning, I was looking at it the completely wrong way. For the longest time, I was actually trying to just come up with a product or a service that I could sell in exchange for money, create a profit. And really, what I should have been doing is looking at providing a solution to a problem. If you don't know what I mean by creating a solution to a problem, maybe some of these examples can give you a bit more of an idea. PayPal. People took issue with putting their personal credit card details online. So what did PayPal do? They provided a solution by providing a secure way for you to transfer and receive money over the internet. KeepCup. People were sick and tired of throwing away coffee cups, which contributed to landfill and had negative impacts on our environment. So what did KeepCup do? They provided a solution to this problem by providing a reusable coffee cup that you can take to cafes to ensure that 1, you're saving money, and 2, you're saving the environment. And 3, even something as simple as movement watches. People wanted high quality, good looking watches, but didn't want to pay full price. So what did Movement do? They created a platform where people could buy really great looking watches for a fraction of the price. In essence, all 3 of those companies are providing a product or a service. However, if you look deeper, they're actually providing a solution to a problem. And that's where I needed to start. And when I first started getting into this whole idea of coming up with a business idea and running a business, I had some really, really shit ideas. So, side note, I've got these books that I always carry with me. They're little notebooks that have ideas or things I like to write down or record just while I'm on the go, and they actually are home to a lot of the really shit business ideas that I have. So I'll read 1 or 2 out for you just to give you a sense of where I was before I even knew what I wanted to do. All right. Okay, here's one. Wait for it. Spreadables. An easy way to put your favorite spread on some bread.
Why?
See, what problem was I trying to fix? My inability to spread Vegemite on toast, probably. Is it a widespread problem that affects a lot of people? Probably not, unless everyone in the world is as incompetent as me. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I wanted to create that was a product, but it wasn't a solution to a problem. So anyway, this process of, trying to come up with a business idea went on for about, I'd say, the good part of 8 to 12 months. I'd always be looking at things that I thought were issues or looking at quick ways to make a few dollars, but I just could never crack onto something that was actually worth it. But then it wasn't until I began, and I think it was about my 3rd year of university, began going to the city in the Melbourne CBD and witnessing just the amount of people experiencing homelessness here in Melbourne, Australia. So for those who don't know, and I guess I'll do a bit more of an introductory sort of video as to who I am later on, but I am a law arts graduate from Deakin University, and so interning during my years at university meant being in the city quite a bit. And every day, I'd see so many people pass, people living on the streets, and really not afford these people a lot of attention. I can recall days where you'd see thousands walk past one person and they'd just either ignore or go on the opposite side of the road, or sometimes throw something down, not spend time just wanting to get to know the person or actually help out. But on the flip side of that, and I reckon I saw more of this, was there's people who walked past and it looked like they wanted to do something, but they just didn't know how. There was this overwhelming apprehension in their eyes, and you could tell that they really wanted to help, but just had no way of understanding how to do it, or there was just no platform that existed to allow them to do something like that. And this is ultimately where the idea for Spair Pair came along. So what was the problem? People wanted to help, but didn't know how. And what was the solution? Potentially creating a platform that allowed people to do this. And as I found out from consuming content on how to start a business, one of the key things that you need to do at the start is really understand who it is you're trying to serve. For us at Spair Pair, it's 2 groups of people. One, it's the people who want to help but don't know how, and the people with a good social conscience, which is actually the majority of everyone in this world. I think everyone has an innate sense to help out the community. And secondly, it's the people we are willing to serve and wishing to serve, those experiencing homelessness and living in disadvantage. So I really began to understand that I had to understand what each party wanted and what each party needed in order to create a sustainable business model and really start something that mattered. So what did I begin doing? I began sitting down with people who were experiencing homelessness and stopping people on the streets. I'd sit down with people sleeping rough and ask them what they needed, and and gave them the time of day to really ask them how I could help in a meaningful way. And I also spoke to people in the CBD, people who I worked with, friends from university, family members, other distant relatives. I spoke to as many people as I could to get their understanding of what homelessness was to them and how they reacted to people living in disadvantage too. And after months and months and months of speaking with people, I began to volunteer in homeless kitchens. I began to run volunteer groups. I began to speak to organizations who were already in the space. And I began to collect this really cool database of information as to what it is that people really truly needed. And consequently, what I found out was that socks, amongst everything, socks was the most highly requested item. And that's ultimately where the light bulb moment was for me. I thought, wait a minute, we all need socks. It's the first thing you put on in the morning. It's the last thing we take off at night. People need socks for going to work. People need socks for lounging around at home. People need socks to stay warm. People need socks to ensure they don't sweat into their shoes and ruin their shoes and promote bacteria. Everyone needs socks. And then I thought, why don't I create a platform whereby people can purchase a pair of socks for them, and then the minute they buy a pair of socks for them, another pair, a spare pair, is generated for someone in need. So what that does is it allows people to create change in an easy, non-invasive way. So I thought, I'm beginning to provide a solution to two issues. One, socks, providing socks to people who need them. And two, ridding of the apprehension of people who wanted to help but didn't know how. Essentially covering two bases with one business idea. Now, when I thought of this, I remember having this moment of, oh my God, I think this could actually work. This is something that I think could actually work. Now, in the last year, we have achieved some incredible things that I still can't fathom as to how we did it, but we've probably had more failure than anything. And I think that's the beauty of starting a business, is the amount of learning that you can do in such a short amount of time. And for our first 8 months in business, it was probably one of the happiest moments of my life. I mean, we were able to increase our sales, we were able to increase our impact, and overall we're just doing things that I loved, and I just had so much fun doing them, knowing that people were getting something out of it. And now that we're in the whole COVID-19 pandemic, we're in such an unprecedented and uncertain time, and I don't think anyone really knows what's gonna happen over the next couple of months. We're in such a unique part of our story, and who knows? I mean, we are probably facing some of the biggest challenges that we've ever had to face in our short business life. But I think it's also a really exciting time to gain from this, gain understanding as to how to navigate these uncertainties into the future. So yeah, that's a little bit of a intro into where Spair Pair came from, how I sort of came up with the idea, and how Josh and I co-founded together. I think in the future I'm gonna make a lot more in-depth videos detailing each step of the progress and each step of our process into starting it, and maybe even do some videos that are more practical about how you can start a business or how you can start a social enterprise. Because to be honest, there's not a lot out there, and especially for young people, reading slabs and slabs of text on boring government websites can be really draining and really demotivating. So if I can create something that's informative and interesting and beneficial, please let me know. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please comment down below the sort of content you want to see in the future. And yeah, I'm really loving making these videos, so if you can show me any support, I'd be super appreciative. And until then, I will see you in the next one. Roll the outro. Well, this is awkward, there is no outro. So like I said before, if you don't like to subscribe, you're gonna hear 7 hours of me playing horse with no name.